Islam Makhachev, you want him to keep fighting? Have you had enough of him? Has he proved his point yet? Are there things you like to see him do? Do you want him to go out like Khabib? Do you predict that he'll go out like Khabib? Who has been more dominant, Islam or Khabib? Dominant at that weight class, dominant at cleaning out and getting rid of a division. Who's been more dominant? And it's not as simple as you think. It's not as simple as, well, let's go see how many guys that Islam beat and let's see how many guys Khabib beat. And that kind of looks the same. Let's go see how many top 10 guys Islam beat and top 10 Khabib beat. That looks kind of the same. Well, how many championship matches did Islam have in Khabib? It's not like that. It never needs to be like that. Those things are silly. There is very good evidence that Islam has cleaned out 155 pounds more than Khabib. And while I don't even want to win an argument of that he did it more, I just want you to understand that they're pretty equal. That's all I want you to understand. And I know that you're pushing back, but that's exactly what a rematch represents. A rematch is absolute proof that you've cleaned out a division. Khabib never had a rematch that I know of. And Khabib beat anybody that was even questionable as number one contender. Charles Oliveira was not a questionable number one contender when Khabib was fighting. And I know as we look back and we saw the rise of Charles, I get where that would have been a special match, but Charles was never in active Khabib days higher than 4. And there was not a group or a push, including you guys on the underground forum or in my comment section, that argued Charles higher than 4. But Khabib never did a rematch, at least not one I can think of. I know he never rematched Gaethje. I know he never had more than one experience in there with Poirier. And I know they wanted him desperately to rematch McGregor, but he said, I've already done that. So Khabib never had a rematch, but he did go through anybody who was ever even questionably a number one contender. And look, please don't bring up Tony Ferguson. He signed the contract 5 times. He tried to do it 5 times. So Khabib steps away, happened to be 29-0. But number 30, whoever number 30 would have been, it wasn't even a discussion of Charles, right? It's a familiar face that you guys would know. It wasn't going to be Gamrot. It wasn't going to be Arm. It's a name that you know. It couldn't have been Islam. It would have been a name that you know it for sure if Khabib had done number 30. What Dana wanted him to do was Conor McGregor, but Poirier and Gaethje still would have been ranked in front of everybody. So for sure, it would have been a rematch representing the first rematch. But he didn't do it. He retired. And as you look at Islam, who's saying, I'd like to go to 170 pounds. And a little known fact on Khabib is they were never going to get him to fight again. When he said 29-0, he meant it. And when he said that night, when he happened to be 29-0, 29-0 actually had nothing to do with his decision, but it was a byproduct of the decision that he made. They were never going to get him. They didn't want to take the belt back. They didn't even let it change the rankings. They didn't even remove him from the USADA pool because they thought, we can give us a couple of more conversations. But what they didn't understand is they were making 2 big mistakes. One, they were offering him a rematch. Champions hate rematches. 2, it was at 155 pounds. Those were the 2 huge mistakes when the UFC was attempting to negotiate with Khabib. But the UFC, if they could go back, wanted to have done it differently. See, they didn't just want Khabib. They wanted 155-pound champion to remain champion and to do one more fight. And the reason I tell it that way, if they really wanted him, all they needed to do was to change those 2 things. They wanted to get Khabib's consideration. Now, who knows where he would have decided, but they didn't even get him to consider their proposition. If they wanted to get him to consider it, they needed to make it 170 pounds or catch weight, and they needed to make it with an opponent that he had yet to face. And I bring that to you because Islam's already done a rematch, and now he's openly saying, I don't want to do rematches. And they're going to find a way. They're going to roll Charles out. They're going to, they'll wrap him in bubble tape so that he can't put a paper cut above his eye. Like, whatever it takes, for some really weird reason, they're going to do that match. And they're going to find out a lot sooner than they would have to find out that Islam's done. And I don't know if that's 2 more fights. I know if he keeps the schedule he contractually has the right to have, which is 3 fights, if he keeps his 3 fights without 2024, you are not going to see him in 2025. That I do know. And one of the reasons that you're getting the resistance and the reluctance is you're giving matches he doesn't want to have. He doesn't want to have matches at 155 pounds. He will do it. He will do it. But he doesn't want to. If you want to keep him and elongate his career, you're going to have to start looking at either a catch weight or 170. Now, that isn't today's problem, but a year sure goes by fast. Islam Makhachev will not weigh 155 pounds more than 3 times again in his life. You do what you want with that, but I am guaranteeing you that statement to be true. And he doesn't want to do rematches, and the world doesn't want to see him doing rematches. If they did, they would have been the original matches that were booked. So it's just one of these interesting spots that if you lost Khabib, are you fine with losing him, or do you wish you would have had him? Because history's going to repeat itself. Right now you have Islam, but you're going to lose Islam. If you don't want to lose him, make sure you understand the 2 things that you're doing that are going to shorten his career as opposed to extend it. And maybe you can't do it immediately, maybe you can't do it in the short term, but as quickly as you can get him away from 155 pounds, of which he will never weigh 3 times, more than 3 times on his time left living. Big statement. And get him out of rematches. Get him fresh blood. If you're doing rematches, then you're signifying and admitting an absolute dominance. Is that where you're at? Are you admitting? Is he the most dominant? Has he cleaned it out? Has he went through everybody? No, he hasn't. So why are you giving him rematches?